You are tuned to Iri-e-learning, and I am your host, Teacher. In this mixtures and separation lesson, the focus will be on the other two types of mixtures, suspensions and colloids. Check the description box for links to all the videos related to this unit. By the end of this lesson, we should be able to define the terms suspension and colloid, list examples of suspensions and colloids, state the properties of suspensions and colloids, identify different types of colloids. Before getting into the lesson, let us start with a recap of types of mixtures. Remember, mixtures are of three types: solutions, suspensions, and colloids. In the previous lesson, we learned about solutions. However, for this lesson, we will cover suspensions and colloids. You can find a link to the previous lesson in the description box. We will start with suspensions. Therefore, we need to know what a suspension is. And the definition states that a suspension is a heterogeneous mixture that consists of large insoluble particles suspended in a fluid which eventually settle out. Since suspensions are heterogeneous, each component retains its identity or features. In other words, the individual components of a suspension are recognizable. Of course, if the suspension consists of large insoluble particles in a liquid, then the two components will be easily distinguishable, especially when the solid settles out. Examples of suspensions include dust particles suspended or floating in the air. This is a common phenomenon observed during the morning when a beam of sunlight enters a dark room through a small crack. Within the stream of light, you can see tiny dust particles randomly moving or swirling around in the air. Eventually, the dust particles settle on stationary objects in the vicinity, such as furniture. A mixture of sand and water would initially have the sand particles suspended in the water. However, the particles of the sand are heavy and they will settle out very quickly. So the rate at which the insoluble particles of a suspension settle out depends on the mass of the suspended particles. The greater the mass, the faster the particles will settle out. Orange juice with pulp is also a suspension. When the container is left undisturbed, the pulp, which is the insoluble particles, will settle out. This is why a carton of orange juice with pulp is shaken before pouring for drinking. Other examples of suspensions include medicines that require the content to be shaken before use. Example, milk of magnesia, which is an antacid suspension. We also have paint mixtures, which have a dye suspended in turpentine oil. The components of these paints are stirred before use to obtain an even consistency. Next, we can examine the properties of suspensions. Suspensions are heterogeneous mixtures, which means that all the components of the mixtures are distinguishable from each other. Suspensions typically have large insoluble solid particles that are visible with the unaided eye. These insoluble solid particles are generally suspended in a fluid and they settle out if left undisturbed over time. The insoluble particles can be filtered or collected. We just completed suspensions and we're moving right into colloids. What is a colloid? A colloid is a heterogeneous mixture that contains insoluble microscopic particles that evenly disperse or spread throughout another substance. And this substance can either be a solid, liquid, or gas. The insoluble particles of a colloid remain suspended in the substance, also called a medium, and never settle out. It is important to note that colloids are heterogeneous mixtures, but this property is only observable at the microscopic level. So with the unaided eye, meaning without the help of a magnifying instrument such as a magnifying lens or microscope, colloids may have a homogeneous appearance, which we will see when we look at examples of different types of colloids. However, commit to memory that colloids are heterogeneous mixtures. Types of colloids. Colloids are classified into 5 groups, starting with aerosols. Aerosols are formed by adding liquid particles to a gas medium, example, fog, mist, hairspray. We also have solid aerosols in which the solid particles combine with a gas medium, as is the case with smoke, smog, and volcanic ash. Sols are formed when solid particles mix with a liquid medium, example, blood, ink, and mud. We also have solid sols in which the solid particles are mixed into to a solid medium, example glass and gemstones. Foams are formed when gas particles are mixed in a liquid or solid medium, such as whipped cream, shaving cream, insulation foam, and memory foam. Memory foam and insulation foam are firmer foams and are called solid foams. Emulsions are colloids in which the liquid particles are mixed with a liquid medium. These liquids usually do not mix and are called immiscible liquids, such as oil and water, mayonnaise, milk, and salad dressing. Gels are formed when liquid particles are added to a solid medium, example, toothpaste, jam, cheese, gelatin, and rubber. Let us take a look at some of the examples of colloids. First, we have smoke, which is an aerosol, whipped cream, which is a foam, gelatin or jello, which is a gel, gemstones, which are salts, milk, which is an emulsion. We will now investigate the properties of colloids. Colloids are heterogeneous mixtures, which is more noticeable at the microscopic level. Therefore, a magnifying instrument is required to see the insoluble particles of a colloid. However, with the unaided eye, colloids may appear to be homogeneous. The insoluble particles remain dispersed in the medium and never settle out. The insoluble particles cannot be filtered or collected, but can be separated by centrifugation. The lesson summary points include: a suspension is a heterogeneous mixture. A suspension consists of large insoluble particles suspended in a fluid, eventually settling out. Sand and water and dust in the air are examples of suspensions. The insoluble solid particles of a suspension can be filtered or collected. A colloid is a heterogeneous mixture. Colloids contain insoluble microscopic particles that remain evenly distributed throughout another medium, and this medium can either be solid, liquid, or gas. The insoluble particles of a colloid remain suspended in the medium and never settle out. The insoluble particles of a colloid cannot be filtered, but can be separated by centrifugation. So it's quiz time, and you have 5 seconds to answer each question after it is read aloud. Question 1. The photograph to the left shows a vial with a single dose of a medicine. What instruction would you expect to see on the label? A. Decant liquid and consume the residue. B. Drink the liquid only. C. Shake before taking. D. None of the above. The answer is C. Shake before taking. This is to ensure that the insoluble particles of the suspension become evenly distributed in the liquid before drinking the medicine. Question 2. Which mixture is a suspension? A, B, C, or D? The answer there is A. Question 3. What type of colloid is shown in the photograph? A. Emulsion. B. Aerosol. C. Foam. D. Salt. And the answer is salt. Question 4. What type of colloid is mayonnaise? A. Emulsion. B. Foam. C. Gel. D. Salt. And the answer is emulsion. Question 5. Identify the statements that are correct about suspensions. 1. Suspensions are homogeneous mixtures. 2. Suspensions are heterogeneous mixtures. 3. Suspensions consist of large insoluble particles suspended in a fluid. 4. Suspensions consist of large soluble particles suspended in a fluid. And the options are A. 1 and 3, B. 1 and 4, C. 2 and 3, D. 2 and 4. The answer is C, options 2 and 3, because suspensions are heterogeneous mixtures that contain large insoluble particles suspended in a fluid. Also keep in mind that a fluid is either a liquid or gas. We have reached the end of our lesson. If you found this video helpful, remember to like, share, and subscribe. When you subscribe, you will receive notifications as new videos are uploaded. So until next time, I am Teacher with Iri-e-learning.